Have you ever experienced something so wrong, so fundamentally off, that every rational explanation you tried to reach for just crumbled away? Not a horror movie, not a dream, something that happened in your house, on a road, in the dark, with no warning and no apology. That feeling, that cold, hollow certainty that you are not alone, is what every single person in tonight's stories lived through, and none of them have ever fully recovered. Stay with me, because these three accounts are unlike anything I've covered before. They were submitted by real people, ordinary lives, ordinary places, and then something stepped in and changed everything. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel is dedicated to true paranormal encounters, not urban legends, not campfire stories dressed up in fancy language. Real accounts from real people who reached out because they needed someone to take them seriously. Tonight, we are taking them very seriously. Let's begin. This account comes from a woman named Carrie, who was 26 years old when she moved into a rental property in rural Ohio with her husband and their 2-year-old daughter. She submitted her story in detail, and I want to give it the time it deserves, because what happened to her family over the course of 4 months is genuinely one of the most disturbing accounts I have ever read. Carrie and her husband Marcus moved to Ohio from Pittsburgh for his job. The rental was affordable, spacious, and sat on a long gravel driveway lined with oak trees that Carrie described as beautiful in autumn. She remembers thinking that her daughter Lily would love growing up around trees. She remembers thinking it felt like a fresh start. The first sign that something was off came within the first week. Carrie was putting Lily down for a nap in the early afternoon when she heard what she described as a low, rhythmic knocking coming from inside the wall beside the child's closet. Not pipes, not the house settling. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Then silence. Then 3 more. She stood there, listening, her daughter already drifting to sleep, and she told herself it was the old radiator system doing something quirky. She convinced herself quickly. That's important, because that is what we do. We convince ourselves. The knocking came back the following Tuesday. Same time, same wall, same pattern. 3, then pause, then 3. Carrie mentioned it to Marcus, who checked the wall, found nothing, and suggested it might be an animal in the crawl space. She accepted that explanation. 2 weeks passed without incident. Then, one night, at approximately 2 in the morning, Lily began screaming from her room. Not crying, screaming. Carrie bolted from bed and reached the room in seconds, and when she turned the light on, Lily was standing in her crib, arms stretched toward the far corner of the room, saying a word Carrie couldn't immediately recognize. She thought at first Lily was saying, "Mama," the way tired toddlers sometimes garble the word, but she wasn't. She was saying a name, a proper name, something that sounded like Aldous. Lily had never used that word before. She had never heard it in their household. The family had no relatives or friends named Aldous. Carrie picked her daughter up, calmed her, and spent the rest of the night in the rocking chair in that room. She did not sleep. She watched the corner. Nothing moved. Over the next 3 weeks, Lily began talking to the corner regularly during the day, not screaming anymore. Conversational, the way a child talks to a grandparent or a familiar friend. Carrie would walk in, and Lily would be sitting, facing that corner of the room, chattering in a mix of real words and toddler babble, and the corner would be empty. Every time Carrie entered, Lily would stop, turn around, and smile. Normal, happy, completely untroubled. That disturbed Carrie more than the screaming had. She started researching the house. The property had no notable history in public records, but she found a mention in a local historical society newsletter about a farming family that had owned the land in the early 20th century. One of the family members listed was a man named Aldous Vreeland, who had died on the property in 1923. Carrie does not use the word proof in her account. She's careful about that. She uses the word enough. She had enough. She told Marcus that night. He went quiet for a long time and then suggested they contact a priest. He was not a particularly religious man. That detail tells you something. They did not contact a priest. At least, not immediately. Because 2 nights later, everything escalated in a way that made every prior event feel like a gentle warning. Carrie woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of Lily's monitor crackling. She lay still for a moment, listening, and then she heard it through the monitor. Not Lily's voice, something else. A low, garbled sound, like a voice recorded at the wrong speed, being played back in a room with bad acoustics. It lasted approximately 4 seconds. Then Lily said, clearly and calmly into the darkness, "Okay." Carrie ran. She got to the room and Lily was lying down, eyes closed, appearing entirely asleep. The corner was dark. The room was cold enough that Carrie could see her own breath, and this was September, with the heat running. She scooped Lily up and went to her bedroom. She sat on the bed holding her daughter until Marcus woke at 5 and found them both there. They moved within 3 weeks. Carrie said she never saw anything, no figure, no apparition, no physical manifestation of anything, and somehow that made it worse. Because whatever was in that house never needed to show itself. It had already found a way in. She never learned whether subsequent tenants experienced anything. The property listing went back up 6 months after they left. She thinks about that sometimes. So do I. Let's take a breath and move into the second story, because this one hits differently. Where Carrie's account is slow and creeping and domestic, story number 2 is immediate and visceral. This one happened outside, in the dark, with nowhere to run. This account was submitted by a man named Daniel, who was 32 at the time of his experience. He's a forestry worker in the Pacific Northwest, and he is, by his own description, not a superstitious person. He grew up hunting and camping. He has spent hundreds of nights alone in remote areas. He is comfortable in the dark in a way that most people never become. I want you to hold on to that, because when a person like that tells you something scared them, you listen differently. It was late October, on a night he describes as overcast and very dark. No stars, no moon visible through the cloud cover. Daniel had been doing a solo assessment in a section of forest about 40 minutes from the nearest town. His truck was parked at the end of a Forest Service access road, and he was walking the last half-mile back after finishing his notes for the day. He had a headlamp and a flashlight. He knew the path. He had walked it twice already that day. About a quarter mile from his truck, he stopped. He says he doesn't know why he stopped. He wasn't tired. He hadn't heard anything. He describes it as a kind of automatic response, like your body receiving a signal that your brain hasn't processed yet. He stood there on that dirt road in the dark and he felt, his words, observed. Not watched, observed. He made that distinction carefully in his submission, and I think it's important. Watched implies someone looking at you. Observed implies something studying you. He swept his flashlight slowly across the tree line to his left. Nothing. He checked the right side. Nothing. He looked behind him down the road. The beam cut about 30 feet through the darkness, and at the very edge of that light, he saw something. He describes it as a shape. Tall, stationary. Too tall for a person, he says, by what he estimated as at least 1.5 feet. But the proportion was wrong in other ways too. The width was wrong. The silhouette suggested something that was roughly human in the sense that it was upright, but the geometry of it, the actual shape of the shadow it made, was not something his brain could easily categorize. He stood there looking at it for what he estimates was about 8 seconds. Then it moved. Not away from him, not toward him. It moved sideways, into the trees, and Daniel says the movement was wrong in the same way the shape was wrong. Too smooth. No sound, no branches disturbing, no leaf noise, no crunch of undergrowth. Something that large, moving that quietly through dense forest at night, he says, is not possible. Not for anything he has ever encountered in years of working in those woods. He ran. He is not ashamed of that. He ran the 1/4 mile to his truck, got in, and drove without stopping until he hit the main road. He sat in the parking lot of a gas station for 20 minutes before he stopped shaking enough to feel comfortable driving home. He went back the next morning with a colleague, not to investigate, just because he had to finish his assessment. He says the area where he had been standing showed nothing unusual. No tracks, no broken branches at the tree line. His colleague didn't notice anything strange. The woods were ordinary in daylight. Daniel submitted his story because he wanted it on record, his words. He said he doesn't need anyone to believe him. He needs it to exist somewhere outside of his own head. That is a sentence I think about every time I receive an account. The need for documentation. The need to say, this happened. Whatever it was, it happened. I believe him. Now I need to warn you. The third story is where tonight gets genuinely difficult. The first 2 accounts are disturbing. They're unsettling. They linger. But story number 3 is the one that stayed with me for days after I first read it. The one I kept coming back to at odd moments, in the middle of other tasks, lying awake at night. It's quieter than you might expect. It doesn't involve monsters in the dark or voices through walls. It involves something far more personal and far more invasive. And in my view, that makes it the most frightening of the 3. This account comes from a woman I'll call Nora, at her request. She asked that I change her name and her location, and I have honored that. What she described to me in her submission is something she has told only 2 other people. Her therapist, who she says responded with careful, measured professionalism, meaning the therapist did not confirm or deny anything, just listened. And her older sister, who believed her without hesitation and has not spent a night alone since. Nora is in her late 30s. She is a graphic designer. She lives alone in an apartment in a mid-sized city. She is articulate, self-aware, and in her submission, she goes to significant lengths to explain why she initially dismissed what she was experiencing before she eventually stopped being able to dismiss it. It started with mirrors. Not all mirrors, specifically the full-length mirror on the back of her bedroom door. She had owned it for about 2 years before anything happened. Thrift store find. Nice frame, nothing remarkable. She had no reason to distrust it. The first incident was small. She was getting ready in the morning, brushing her hair in front of that mirror, running late, distracted, and she looked up, and for a fraction of a second, a truly brief moment that she initially wrote off as a visual glitch, her reflection blinked out of sync with her. She blinked. Then, a half beat later, the reflection blinked. She laughed. She told herself she was overtired. She left for work. It happened again 6 days later. Same mirror, same experience. That slight, horrible delay. She was more alert this time, less hurried, and she stood there after it happened and stared at her reflection. Her reflection stared back, perfectly synchronized, perfectly normal. She moved her hand. The reflection moved its hand. She leaned left. The reflection leaned left. Everything correct, everything matching. She began paying attention to the mirror. Over the following 2 weeks, she noticed things that she cataloged in a note on her phone because she wanted to track whether she was losing her mind in a measurable way. She wrote down dates and times. The out-of-sync blink happened 3 more times. Once, she noticed her reflection's expression looked wrong when she wasn't actively looking directly at it. Specifically, when she was looking at her reflection in her peripheral vision. She couldn't define wrong precisely, but she described it as the way a face looks when it doesn't know it's being watched. Slack, empty. Not her resting face, something else. Then came the morning that changed everything. It was early, before 6, and she was in her bedroom looking for her phone. The room was dim, only the bathroom light was on, casting partial illumination into the bedroom. She wasn't paying attention to the mirror. She was moving around the room, checking under clothes, looking on her desk. And then she stopped because something in her peripheral vision caught her attention. Her reflection was not mirroring her. She was standing still, facing away from the mirror, looking toward her desk. Her reflection was turned toward her. She turned around slowly. As she turned, the reflection completed its turn at the same time, so that by the time she was fully facing the mirror, the reflection was facing her. Normal, synchronized. But she had seen it. In those seconds of peripheral vision, she had seen her reflection facing her before she turned around. She left the apartment. She went to a coffee shop and sat there for 3 hours. She went back that evening and took the mirror off the door. She put it in her hallway closet, face against the wall. She told herself it was a product issue, a defect in the glass causing some kind of visual distortion. She is a rational woman, and she wanted a rational explanation, and she almost had herself convinced. 3 nights later, she woke up at approximately 2:30 in the morning and lay in the dark for a moment, orienting herself. Her bedroom door was open, and the hallway was dim, and the closet door at the end of the hallway was open. She had closed that closet door. She knew she had closed it. She got up. She walked to the closet. The mirror was still inside, still face against the wall. She stood in the hallway, looking into the closet. Everything still, everything quiet. She reached in and pulled the closet door shut, went back to bed, and did not sleep again that night. In the morning, the closet door was open again. She got rid of the mirror, carried it down to the street at 7 in the morning, and left it on the sidewalk. By afternoon, it was gone. Someone had taken it. She says she thinks about that sometimes. Whoever picked it up, she hopes they're fine. She doesn't know if they are. In the 6 months since she removed the mirror, nothing has happened. No incidents, no disturbances, no open doors. She lives in the same apartment. She has a different mirror now, a small one over the bathroom sink. She says she doesn't linger in front of it. She submitted her story because, in her words, she needed someone to validate that she wasn't describing a breakdown. She was describing an experience, something that happened outside of her body, outside of her mind, in the physical world. She wanted the distinction acknowledged. I am acknowledging it. Thank you for spending tonight with me. If this video reached you, if it got under your skin in the way I think it did, please share it, not because of the algorithm, though that helps, but because these 3 people trusted me with their stories, and I think the right audience deserves to hear them. More accounts are coming, more voices that needed someone to listen. I'll be here. Stay careful out there. Pay attention to the small wrongness. Trust the part of you that stops before your brain catches up. And whatever you do tonight, whatever room you fall asleep in, whatever mirror is on your wall, try not to look too long at your reflection, just in case it's not quite keeping up with you. See you next time.